Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving and a good long weekend. Today's video is going to be really short because there's not a whole lot for me to talk about, I don't think, except for one thing that's really important, and I'll get to that right off the bat. So, if you check your school email, or in the case of people who aren't with Renfrew County, if you check the email address that you provided to us, not your D2L one, but your other one, you'll find a link to your markbook. So I use Google Sheets to make to compile the marks, and it's got this feature where you can publish it to the web so that people can see. Basically it generates a website. So what you're seeing is actually what your markbook looks like. What I want to do is I want to explain to you how that works and how to interpret it. So I better do that later. Good morning, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you had a really good weekend, long weekend. Today, there's not a whole lot for me to talk about because it's a short week. I've decided to just publish 2 lessons this week instead of 3 because we had a couple short weeks in a row with some holidays in there too. So it'll be a short video, but important one because, as you probably noticed, for those of you who check your email regularly, you've got a link to your markbook, and when you looked at it, you might have had some questions as to, what exactly are you looking at and what does everything mean. So I'm going to explain that a little bit later on. But first, just to cover the lesson content that we're going to get to. 2 lessons this week, one that's kind of tricky and the other one's very straightforward. So the very straightforward one is on plotting, which the only really, I think, big concept or new concept is the idea that it's possible for something to be a story but not a plot. So the essence, if you're into philosophy and you know your Aristotle, you know that Aristotle said that everything in the universe has got an essence, like some sort of quality that it possesses, that without that quality it would no longer be that thing. Like the idea that a knife, the essence of the knife is the blade. It doesn't matter what kind of handle that knife has got, it'll still be a knife as long as it's got a blade, but as soon as you take that blade away, no longer a knife. As soon as you take conflict out of a story, it's no longer a plot. All right, that's the main takeaway from that lesson that you have to understand, is that conflict is it's central to the idea of there being plot. The way that I teach plot when I'm teaching an English class is I like that plot diagram that you'll find in the lesson content is what I like to focus on, showing how every story starts off with life kind of just going along, and then an incident happened, the inciting incident, which introduces the conflict to the story. Without that incident happening, that conflict wouldn't be created and life would probably just continue on like normal. But because of that incident and because of that conflict, the story builds up to a climax and then eventually becomes resolved. And when you get down to it, it's all about that central conflict, the conflict being introduced and the conflict sort of building and reaching coming to a head up at the climax and then being resolved at the end. The story, if it's got a resolution, it's because the conflict has been resolved. So that central conflict is at the center of any plot that you write. So as a fiction writer, you want to focus on that conflict. You want to make sure that you've got, number one, you have a central conflict in your story, and that central conflict is amazing in some way. Like it's original or it's creative, it's unexpected, in whatever way. Crafting that conflict is an essential part of crafting your story. So that assignment's going to be a really easy one. You're just going to be making some discussion board posts. Make sure that you check the OWL website if necessary. If you are, because you have to cite a bibliographic entry for the different stories that you're going to be talking about or the different plots you're going to be talking about. So make sure that you know how that is supposed to look. Check the OWL website to refresh your memory if you forget how that's what that's supposed to look like, and this will make more sense when you actually look at the assignment. So it's a very straightforward one, and I don't expect anyone's going to have any issues with it. The one you'll probably have issues with is the first one though, stream of consciousness, because it is a weird technique. It really is. It's effective, it's weird, it's hard to do right, it's easy to do really poorly. It's easy to do it poorly but think that it's really good. It's weird. So basically, stream of consciousness technique is the idea that it's the experience of the narrator that's important, not the actual story. So to give you like an example of that, something that a lot of people have read To Kill a Mockingbird in high school at some point. I'm teaching in my grade 9 class. So To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a story. It's got it's a plot, and it's got a central conflict to it. It's got a couple of central conflicts to it. It's actually two plots overlapping each other. But the emphasis is on events. So the emphasis being on, here's an event that happens in Maycomb. So you've got, a fire happens at Ms. Maudie's house, and Boo Radley puts a blanket around Scout, and she didn't realize it was him. And so that is an event that happens. And then a little bit farther on, there's another event that happens. You've got the trial of Tom Robinson started because he's being accused of raping Mayla Ewell. And even though it's pretty clear we're going to find out that he's innocent, everybody just assumes that he's guilty because that's the way things go. And then, so that is described, that event. And then there's another event that happens later on, and so on. And that's typically how stories, how narratives have been crafted. Stream of consciousness puts that on to the side, and it's basically the thought process, like tapping into the thoughts of the person, of the character, as they are like experiencing the event or as they are thinking about life. Basically, that's what stream of consciousness technique is. The example you're going to see is the most famous, it really is the most famous novel of the 20th century. Probably, I don't personally, I read it a couple of times, and I do appreciate James Joyce, and it is certainly a work of art. I don't think that I would call it the perfect novel, but a lot of people consider it to be the greatest novel ever written. And James Joyce used a variety of writing techniques, and one of them was stream of consciousness. And the last chapter that you got the excerpt of Molly Bloom thinking about back when her husband proposed to her, all written in stream of consciousness. It's just it's a pouring out of a person's mind. But it's not really a pouring out of it. It's just like it's a stream, and you're like tapping into it or tuning into it. The idea is you get to actually like see what's going through a person's mind, which is a really cool thing when you think about it. That's what communication really is, actually, when you get to the essence of it, is it's like taking ideas from my mind and transferring them to your mind. And I might do that in the form of a story or in the form of an essay or whatever. But it's never perfect. It's because of the way that communication works and the fact that there's a medium, there's something between us. I can never quite get my thoughts to you the way that they are in my head. And if you've ever been like agonizing over an essay and you wanted to say something but you just couldn't come up with the words to say it the way that to do it justice, you know what I'm talking about. So stream of consciousness is like tuning in, and the problem with it as a writer is you can't capture all the thoughts. It's not possible. You're creating an illusion that you're seeing somebody's thoughts, but honestly, you can't capture everything. And a lot of people just substitute rambling and call it stream of consciousness. They just ramble, and then they just package it and say, this is stream of consciousness technique. And if you don't think it's good, it's because you're not able to understand the quality of my art. But actually, there's more to it than just rambling. After you have your initial rambling, which you should, in the activity you're going to do, you're going to ramble for like 5 minutes. And then what you're going to do, though, is you're going to go back and you're going to craft. So you're going to clean up any spelling errors, because the ideas that those words represent, those ideas there's no reason to misspell words. There's no reason to miscapitalize words. There is a reason to not follow the rules of grammar and punctuation because we don't think in those terms. So don't worry about grammar and punctuation, but polish it up so that the spelling is good and the capitalization is correct, because you don't want to lose the reader. That's not what the point of it is. You also want to go back and you want to craft, you want to revise the same way that you've revised any story, because you want to make it seem like I'm tapped into, you know, somebody's thought process, which means it's going to be like fragmented, it's going to be choppy. The person will go off on tangents and things. And when you have a look at Molly Bloom's monologue, you'll see her, like, how fragmented it is. But at the same time, you'll be able to follow it. If you read carefully, you can follow her thought process. And that is something that you as writer are responsible for doing. Okay? So that's what today's lessons are, and I can see that my promise that there's going to be a short video, I was wrong about that. So I want to move on to the to just showing you what your mark book is and what it looks like and how you interpret it. And other than that, all I can say is have a great week, and make sure that you get in touch with me if and when you need to. Okay, so this is what a person's mark book looks like. I've taken their name out, so I didn't want to embarrass the person. They're doing very well right now. They have got a mark of 3.6. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, if I take a look at the scale here, I see that the 3.6 correlates to 90%. So this person has got 90% of the course right now, and which is awesome. And the question is, well, how did they get that 90%? Well, the way that it's calculated is through your knowledge, thinking, communication, and application marks. And so every, you've been marked with rubrics before, so you know how this works. I keep every mark separate. So when I'm calculating a mark out, and this is, you can only see part of it. We've obviously done more than just this. But you can see that I don't just record one mark for any assignment. I record multiple marks for every assignment. So all those are kept separately, and then those are averaged out based on whether they're a knowledge thing or a thinking thing and so on. I average those out into different categories, and then I average that out to come up with your term mark. So basically, it comes down to this. As you complete your assignments, your mark will update. So for those of you who are up to date with your work, you're following along with the course, excellent job, and you've got a good sense of where you are in the course right now. For those of you who are behind, I've got zeros in your mark book, and of course those have a big impact on your mark. So, but as you submit work, I do grade it, and I don't penalize per se for late work. I do expect that if you hand something in really late, it's going to be really good, so I might be a bit harsher when I'm marking it, but I don't penalize anything. So if you do have zeros, if you are behind, get caught up so that your term mark will climb. And that's basically how this mark book works, and whenever you want to take a look and see how you're doing, click on that link and it'll bring you here.